Hi, in this video I'm going to share the story of how I eventually learned to rebalance the neurotransmitters in my bipolar brain. I first started to treat my mental health problems using natural remedies in the mid-1980s. Now at that time, the only part of my condition I recognized were the depressions. I could feel the depressions, I knew I had depression, I'd had multiple suicide attempts. So I would take these stacks of supplements, huge amounts of B vitamins, and magnesium and zinc and herbs and amino acids, all targeted really at boosting neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin. That's what we thought caused depression back then. And these remedies worked fantastically well for me personally. I was lucky. For the first 3 years, I was free from depression 11 months of the year. And I'd previously been depressed pretty much continuously for more than 10 years. After those first 3 years, it got even better. I started to go for 2 year stretches, 2.5 year stretches at a time without, well, hardly any depression, very mild sometimes from time to time. And occasionally the severe depression would return and I would take a big stack of supplements again. What I didn't know was that I was actually being flipped up by these remedies into hypomania. A psychotherapist told me in my early 30s, you have bipolar, but I didn't get on with him and I rejected his diagnosis, and I was determined I was going to buck the trend and cure myself. Anyway, in my 40s, it all started to fall apart again. The strategy I'd been using was to just boost serotonin, but then it stopped working. I developed this different type of depression, whereas before the depressions had been very painful and antsy, rather intense feelings of pain. Sometimes people think depression is always a numb feeling. That's a mistake. You know, it can be intense, second by second, painful, antsy, tortuous experience. Now, this new depression in my 40s came on slowly compared to the others that came on quickly. And it was a numb state. I just couldn't really feel anything. I lost all enthusiasm I had in life and all of the things I was pleasure in doing previously. I no longer enjoyed. I didn't even have the motivation to find a solution, whereas before I was like on the case, running around, doing things. Partly because I was hypomanic, but also even when I was depressed before, I was in such acute pain that you would do anything to end the pain. On the one hand, think about killing myself. On the other hand, look for solutions. But with this numb, demotivated, flat state, I didn't even have the energy or motivation to bother to look on the internet for a solution. My life had shrunken to 6 hours of work a week. The rest of it, I was sitting on the sofa, living on peanut butter, flicking TV channels. It stripped away my contact with my family, my friends, my finances. It just took everything from me. And it lasted for 5 years. And I was right down to my wit's end. I decided I was going to kill myself again, that I'd had a good run trying to get rid of the mental health problem, but eventually I hadn't escaped it, and the best thing I could do would be to just end it right there. No point carrying on for the next 30 years in this horrible condition. An old friend introduced me to a book called The Edge Effect by Dr. Braveman that profiles the psychological and emotional characteristics of the individual neurotransmitters. So serotonin is about joy and soothing pain, and if you take that away, you have no joy and intense pain. Dopamine is about drive and motivation and energy and excitement about new ideas and creativity for new ideas. And if you take that away or reduce dopamine levels, you basically have the opposite to that state. So this book profiled these neurotransmitters, and it was obvious to me that I was suffering from lack of dopamine. So I'm repeating a little bit of my story from another video, but I gathered together all the remedies I could lay my hands on that would boost dopamine, put them in a bowl by my bedside with a glass of water, woke up at midday, which is all I could muster up at that time, knocked back these remedies, and within a few hours I'm standing in my kitchen and I put up shelves and a spice rack in the kitchen. I had energy and drive and motivation. My life seemed like back, and it just seemed unbelievable. Literally unbelievable. I thought, this can't be true. You can't have just turned around 5 years of depression in a few hours. But it was such a dramatic switch. I could feel I'm not depressed. I could reach out to somebody. I mean, like I could phone an old friend or a family member and restart those relationships if they would have me back. And sadly, not all of them did. Sometimes people don't understand that you may have withdrawn because of a mental illness rather than that you've rejected them, but that's another thing. Anyway, on the basis of this was first day of success. I took the same dosage and the same prescription the next day and the next day and the next day. But then within 5 days, I was in a very agitated state. I was speeded up, talking too quickly, thinking too quickly, anxious, slightly mixed up, slightly depressed, but not depressed. It was just strange. I now know what that is. That's a bipolar mixed state. And I recognized that I had that state before. In my early 20s, I'd had a few of these bipolar mixed states. They are hideous. If you're having a bipolar mixed state, or if you've ever had them, my heart goes out to you. And please be careful in those times, because you've got the depression mixed with the energy of mania. And I think they're very dangerous. I was always the most at risk of suicide in those mixed states. So I thought, okay, you've only just started with these new remedies, so you don't know how to prescribe them and dosage them. Let's just stop taking everything. I did that, slid back down into a depressed state, and then I tried redosing at a different level. I didn't know if I should take it every second day, or start high to kickstart my situation and then pull back, or whether I should start low and build up. The way I think of it is, I had learned how to put my foot on the gas pedal to give my brain or my engine more dopamine, but I hadn't yet worked out a brake pedal. Thing was, I didn't know I needed a brake pedal. After about 6 weeks, I was not depressed, but still in a sort of slightly precarious state. Didn't quite feel balanced. And I had this horrible rage, just road rage and anger all over the place. I mean, it got really extreme. So what happened was, I was cycling on a Sunday, going to the Sunday markets, and I'm in my officially allotted cycle lane, and there's pedestrians walking around the place. I was ringing my bicycle bell to indicate for the pedestrians to get out the cycle lane, and one guy just wasn't going to have it. He turned around and looked over his shoulder, sort of like as if, I'm walking here, you go around me. And I just snapped. I stepped off the bicycle, grabbed the bicycle lock, which is a big heavy chain, and I threatened him with it. Not verbally, just standing there staring, holding this chain. He recognized that I was a bit crazy and walked away. I pulled my bicycle up on the pavement and just stood there thinking, okay, this can't be. I can't have this level of rage. I'm going to end up hurting somebody, hurting myself, getting arrested, or it's just unacceptable. On the one hand. On the other hand, I can't give up this dopamine boosting I'm doing, because then I'll go back to the depression and end up killing myself. Then I remembered. I had read years ago that one of the reasons why alcoholics can become very angry and impulsively angry. You know those people, alcoholics, who live on the street, and as you walk past they tell you to go F yourself in a very angry and aggressive way? Yeah, apparently the long-term use of alcohol can damage the serotonergic systems in the frontal lobes that sort of moderates you and calms you and gives you tolerance. So they don't have enough serotonin in the frontal lobes and they have this aggression. I thought, might that work for me? Is it that I've got too much dopamine and not enough serotonin? I've somehow created this imbalance. So I turned my bicycle around 180 degrees, zipped off home. I had lots of serotonin boosting remedies from the past. And long story short, it worked. When I balanced the serotonin levels up to moderate the increased levels of dopamine, I had the best of both worlds. I had drive and energy and motivation and no depression from dopamine, and I also was tolerant and moderated. A funny thing I'll share with you is that to this day, I actually have a rough measure of my serotonin status by monitoring my propensity to road rage. You know, if you're going along, whether you're on a bicycle or a car, it's the same deal, and you're late and somebody cuts in front of you, and you just look at how you behave. Are you really angry and you chase them down, banging your horn, or even pull in front of them and start slowing down and being very stupid? Or on the other hand, do you say, oh, okay, no worries, you go. When I lose that tolerant, moderate edge, I know I need more serotonin. It's crude, but it works for me. So this would have been about 2 months into this new phase of my recovery. As I was doing all the reading online about dopamine and how to balance it and what causes the dopamine imbalance and so on and so forth, all this sort of neurophysiology, the two conditions that kept coming up was Parkinson's and bipolar. I thought, well, I don't have Parkinson's, but a psychiatrist did tell me I have bipolar. Could it be I have bipolar? Could he have been right? As I looked more into bipolar, I saw, yeah, look, I don't have the bipolar type 1 with the full crazy manias that are going to end up getting you diagnosed and sectioned very quickly. But I fit perfectly, or rather the diagnosis of bipolar type 2 with rapid cycling fits me perfectly. I mean, like a hand in a tailor-made glove. It explained everything about me. It was a really useful diagnosis. It explained the recurrent depressions, those workaholic states that I thought I was just somebody who was passionate about work. No, I was hypomanic intensive. It explained my reckless hedonistic behaviours I'd sometimes had, the drugs I'd taken, the addictive personality, the weird sleep cycles. It even explained my on-off, intense, not interested sex life. Now, the thing with a medical diagnosis, I'd say to you, is you don't forget the point to a medical diagnosis is to lead you to a better outcome, is to help you to understand your condition and discover a better treatment. It's not to have a label that then confines or inhibits you. In this case, this label opened me up to new possibilities. I decided, let's pretend I do have bipolar disorder. What would I do about that? What does the science tell me? The science says that dopamine levels can go out of control, too high, too low. The same with norepinephrine. Glutamate can be too high, and glutamate doesn't have an emotion like serotonin is about joy, sympathy, empathy, or pain. Glutamate doesn't really have an emotion, or a psychological profile. It's more just raw speed. It just speeds everything up. When I would be in a hyperglutaminergic state, I would have so much energy that I would stay awake for say 26 hours, and then sleep for 5, and then, oh, hey, I gotta wake up. I got stuff to do. Yeah, that's kind of too much glutamate. Can't settle my brain down at night. So I was gonna need to take control of all of those manually by myself. The model I use, some psychiatrists say you can't have a simplistic model like this for bipolar, but I can say this if I want. I'm the guy living with it. I use a model similar to diabetes. A diabetic has a body that doesn't keep their blood sugar under control. So I've got a brain that doesn't keep my norepinephrine, serotonin, dopamine, glutamate levels under control. And like the diabetic has to manually control those things, I'm going to manually control my neurotransmitters. First thing I was going to have to do was to be able to recognize them. So glutamate, that's just raw speed. Dopamine, excessive interest in everything pleasurable. Norepinephrine, boldness and risk-taking, and that's in the manic state. The opposite, the depressed state, there's no difficulty in diagnosing that. It's like, you just feel it. But the manic state, the hypomanic state, is very, very hard to recognize. In fact, from the inside, I can't really see it. What I learned to do was to second position myself to the outside and look at my behaviors. Look at myself. Am I speeded up? Am I talking too quickly? I'm talking a bit quickly now, but I sort of do that when I'm on a camera. I'm not manic right now. It turned out it was actually much easier to find remedies to boost neurotransmitter production and activity, but quite difficult to find remedies that could bring these levels down. I turned initially to branched-chain amino acids and a few other things to dampen down excess dopamine and norepinephrine. That was a bit of a crude and harsh strategy. It was like I would take remedies to boost dopamine, which was putting my foot on the gas, and then if I was going too quickly, I'd pull my foot off the gas and then just virtually do an emergency stop. Branched-chain amino acids will just shut down the dopamine really quickly. So it was a jerky drive, not smooth. But the more I did this, the more skilled I got at adjusting those levels. Eventually, actually, I learned how to combine remedies that gently dampen down dopamine with remedies that gently boost it. Now you might say, well, don't they just cancel each other out? But no, in fact they don't. It's used in conventional psychiatry. You often use a combination treatment with antidepressants and boost stabilizers at the same time. And what they do is they could like push you into the middle, kind of like put limiters, guardrails on the edges so that you don't spin off out and derail. Finding remedies that dampen down excess glutamate was really difficult. In fact, I had to just do personal experimentation. I got taurine was one remedy I got from a book, but it doesn't really dampen down excess glutamate. It just builds up the GABA, or has a GABAergic effect. I started to use low-dose lithium orotate for the first time, microdosing lithium, and that really helped. Started to put together few other remedies that slightly kept the lid on the glutamate. But I was still sometimes overshooting up into a manic state and then crashing down into depression. So I needed a better braking system. And there was no self-help books to tell me how to do this. I don't know if anyone had ever tried doing this before. And the scientific information could sort of point to what the problem was, but not to the solution. So remedies like glycine, for example, the effect of glycine on glutamate and the NMDA receptors is complicated, really complicated to understand. And I said, well, some of them appear to be suggesting it would actually increase glutamate activity and then others decrease it. I need to know the answer. So for glutamate, actually, I did a personal experiment. I did the same with branched-chain amino acids, actually. I deliberately made myself manic. It was very easy to do. I would stop taking anything that was stabilizing, give myself an excessive dose of all the antidepressant remedies and bright light therapy. That's quite antidepressant for me. Within half a day, I'd be flipped up into a hypomanic state, running around my flat. And then I sat down with a glycine or branched-chain amino acids and spooned them under my tongue. Grams and grams and grams of them, sickly amounts of them, to work out what effect these remedies have on me individually, whatever the science actually says. And within a year, I'd gotten a great medicine chest of remedies so that I could manipulate my neurotransmitters in any direction, up, down, left, right, sideways, in any way I wanted. And things were really looking up for me. I felt very confident I was going to get a final solution to this problem, my mental health problems. The next year was very funny. I didn't know how high or low to pitch my level of energy and neurotransmitters. I'd never been normal. I didn't know what normal was for me. I thought, well, firstly, culturally, I'm an Englishman, so surely I'm supposed to be a bit miserable and down most of the time. And occasionally, oh, the sun comes out, let's run out and have a barbecue, but then it rains anyway. Surely I'm not supposed to be happy and sunny disposition all the time. I'm not Italian, for goodness sake. Forgive me if I made some stereotypes there. And I kept trying to pitch myself at a hypomanic, slightly hypomanic state because it felt really good. And that would be like Monday to Friday, and then I would crash with no energy at the weekend and just want to hide behind a big newspaper in the corner of a coffee shop. And I thought, okay, so that's not the right level for you because you're clearly overtaxing your brain, speeding it up during the week, and then it has to sort of pay back and sort of cool down and slow down and regenerate at the weekend. It was literally like I was trying to invent a human to work out what my level should be without any guide. Anyway, within a year, it became obvious what level I should pitch myself at because it was the level that was sustainable. I wasn't having a lot of energy in the week and then exhausted at the weekend. So I got this all week long energy and lack of depression, but not sort of accelerated risky-taking behavior. And also I had good sleep. So it all started to come together. Another thing I had developed, I didn't mention, was I got good at seeing the bipolar coming in advance. I could start to recognize when I was having hedonistic pleasure thoughts days before I was hypomanic. So I knew that my dopamine and norepinephrine were going up. I could see my need for sleep going down or my energy levels and speed going up, knowing, okay, glutamate's going up. And in that way, I could anticipate when I was going to get derailed, change the prescription and dampen down the excess neurotransmitters. I could even target individual ones. What then followed was I had many good years from that. I felt really on top of the condition, like I was controlling it rather than it controlling me. However, it was still a rapid cycling situation. Regularly, 6 times a year, the mania would attempt to hijack my brain and I would nip it in the bud. This was very hands-on driving. I was watching myself going, making sure I wasn't getting derailed, regulating my speed. It might sound like too much, but I was really happy with this because I'd been so ill before and I got so good at doing it that I could kind of do it on the side and then actually live my life independent of this thing. Or not independent of it, but at the same time as this thing. That took me up to 2012. And in 2012, a new problem developed. I started to lose functionality in my brain. I literally began to get early stages of cognitive decline, which is a forerunner for Alzheimer's disease. It's a bit of a depressing story. I was losing the ability to recognize faces. I mean, really badly. I'm literally telling you that a guy in my clinic was shaking my hand, and I'd spent 2 hours with him in a clinic room the week before, and I couldn't recognize him. That's pretty bad. Couldn't do maths in my head, and my hearing had declined. So I then put together a stack of remedies. I want to talk more about this treatment on another occasion, but pertaining to the bipolar and how I learned to control my bipolar. Because of this decline in synaptic connections in my parietal lobes of my brain, I put together a combination of a new stack of remedies to boost my neuroplasticity. Now, I did it to overcome this other problem and not really to treat the bipolar. I was particularly boosting BDNF. And interestingly enough, BDNF goes low in bipolar disorder, especially low in suicidal people and suicidality, both post-mortem and I think in live situations they've seen that BDNF levels are low in the suicidal brain. Well, I'd had a lot of suicidality. So anyway, I boosted my BDNF levels, reduced inflammation, boosted my plasticity. And the results, not only did it more than repair the loss of function I'd had in my parietal lobes, but it actually stabilized my bipolar in a whole new way. The rapid cycling literally stopped. From 2012 to 2017, I went without any manic hijacking attempts. I should have had 36 manic hijacking attempts during that time. What happened in 2017 was I deliberately tried as an experiment. I just couldn't believe how stable I was, and I thought as an experiment, am I really cured? Come on, you haven't really actually cured the bipolar, have you? Surely you're just controlling it. I was still taking quite a stack of neuroplasticity boosting remedies, but I tried stopping the remedies, and no, I have not cured the bipolar disorder. Within 5 days, I had a mixed state. It felt really awful. And I was shocked and afraid. I'd forgotten how unstable this feels. And I had the return of a feature of depression, which is this feeling of hopelessness, which gives you the feeling that you can never escape this and nothing can ever work. And you would think, well, but you must have known that this was just a temporary thing because I did this to myself. I stopped the remedies and that's what induced this depression. And I've just had all of that great history of working out how to treat it. But that's not how it works. When you're inside a depression, you're really inside it. It distorts your perception of reality. It's a real mental illness, and you can't see outside that. If you're suffering from depression right now, if it can make any difference to you, to try to realize that all those feelings you're having is the illness itself distorting your perception of reality. It's not exactly like a hallucination like in psychosis or schizophrenia, where you're seeing something that isn't real. You will be thinking and dwelling upon real things that are depressing. The distortion is that that's all you can see, and you can't counterbalance that with any positivity, because there are good and positive things somewhere. It just sucks. And the moment the depression goes, you suddenly have access to all that different way of thinking. So as soon as I stopped taking my maintenance remedies, this just all came on in one day. Well, about 5 days after I stopped the remedies. And it took a little while to get over it, actually, about a week. But I got back to normal. What I've been trying to work out since then is what is the sort of minimal dosage or optimal dosage of neuroplasticity boosting, maintaining remedies that I need to keep my condition stable. That's what I'm currently on. I have never had to boost my serotonin levels or aggressively boost my dopamine levels since I did the neuroplasticity boosting treatment. And I've never had to dampen down mania, except for that one time. I do take a big stack of supplements. It's like quite a handful, about 20 remedies in the morning and 20 remedies in the evening. But I don't mind doing that at all because I'm not depressed, I'm not manic, I sleep well, I've got good energy, and I enjoy my life. So that's my story so far. If you found that interesting, I'm going to be doing more posts on shorter posts. This was a long one. Thanks for watching. On bipolar neurotransmitters, how you can treat them, and other techniques you can use to control bipolar, including the self-monitoring system, 3-point self-monitoring system that I use. If you're interested in those, you might want to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click on the notifications bell. That way you'll get an update. You can also go to my website, balancingbrainchemistry.co.uk, where you will already find a lot of information. You can also find me on other social media if you use those. Bye for now.